Purdue as Mitchell looks for an answer.
Ooh, pure, nothing but net.
Garland to the basket, stole the inbound pass. He lays it in.
Basketball down there.
Very high percentage shot for him from that spot. Merrill for three. Tristan Thompson on the floor. Diaz for three. That's short. Hard rebound. Ricochets out to Merrill for three again.
For the We Like Sportz Show, tune in and see the latest the crew has to say regarding the latest sports topics nationally and locally. Make sure to check out our website as well, WeLikeSportsPC.com. Subscribe on all platforms, including podcast platforms, YouTube, TikTok, and much more. And be sure to follow us on X at We Like Sportz PC.
Started with Anderson and Ramirez.
He said, let's go, right? Yeah, I'm sure he wants the game to start, but they won't let it. And rightfully so.
And welcome once again to the We Like Sportz Show. Here with Payton Vince, alongside a new co-host. We're waiting on another, but the one we could introduce right now. There's the man, Cameron.
What's going on, man? How we doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing good. It's been an interesting football week. I'll start with that.
Yeah, you know what's even more interesting? The fact that you and I did not play in the backwards hat thing. It just kind of happened, you know?
Well, let's see if the other one shows up the same way.
If it does, this was not planned out whatsoever. I do have to end up saying that beforehand. But anyways, it's been a while since the We Like Sportz Show has been back with myself. We have, I mean, honestly, who knows at this point? There's a variety of different crews. Oh, and here's another one. The man, the myth, the other legend. His head is on the correct way.
There we go.
Gentlemen, how are we?
Good, man. How are you? But just to get things out of the way, before I introduce who Cam and Avi both are, I just want to end up breaking it down this way. We very well might have a show multiple times a week, different types of co-hosts. This might be your Tuesday show. Mondays might look differently. We'll find out as we go on. But first and foremost, since Cam beat Avi here to begin with, we'll have Cam end up introducing himself, though, first, who he is. I mean, first and foremost, let's just mention the fact, too, we all met at the Cleveland Guardians games this year, too. We knew nobody outside of this until this year, but now we have a group. We're doing a podcast, a sports show. That's the better name to call it because podcasts are so 2022. But anyways, Cam, tell people about yourself and how you ended up getting into sports, who you root for, so on and so forth.
Yeah, man. For me, it's all the Cleveland sports for me. Browns, Guards, and Cavs. When it comes to sports related, I got into it with my grandfather at the age of about 3 or 4. Fell in love with baseball first. To me, that's my favorite sport. And then, just kind of trickled down from there. But, played my fair share of baseball, played my fair share of basketball. Never really got into the whole football thing, but definitely enjoy watching it.
And Avi, tell us a little bit about yourself, too, as well. I mean, unfortunately, I'm just going to get it out of the way. He is a Yankees fan.
I knew that was coming. I expected you to start with that. So I am a Yankees fan. I'm originally from Connecticut, born and raised in the Hartford area. And I moved to Cleveland about 3 years ago. My background in sports comes from baseball mostly. Started playing baseball at a super young age. Played through high school. But I also have another sports background in mountain biking. Something that I've done since I was about 10 years old. Spent a lot of time racing when I was younger. But now live in Cleveland. I've been here for about 3 years and was really thrown into the sports scene when I moved here with my wife working for the Cavaliers. So, spending a ton of times at Cavs games and really learning the culture of the city in the sports lens was kind of what drew me to the baseball games. And now over 100 games in 2 years and making some great friends along the way. Couldn't be happier. Couldn't really ask to be in a better city than Cleveland.
Let's see if we can switch over to the Cleveland team though over the Yankees this year.
Good luck. Yeah, I don't think my brother would be very happy with you.
We'll convince him too at the process of it.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
I know it ain't. I know it's not. Seth.
Shout out Seth. Yeah, he's been out here for a number of games. Met all these guys. Yeah, love that dude.
100 games though. That's
a lot
wild.
of baseball. It's a lot of baseball.
45 this year. I mean, I thought that was record breaking, but I mean, you're just hanging on at all these games too, and denying people of Zins.
I was doing God's work.
You know, I know a guy that once said that. I don't know who he is.
Sounds
but I
familiar.
heard him say that before.
But I hear he likes to wear red flannels too.
Only on Tuesday.
Only on Tuesday.
But I mean, honestly, it's been wild to end up talking about. I mean, we could end up talking about the playoffs, but we're so far past that now too. I mean, the title of today's show alone is already about the weather. It may be getting chilly, but the Cleveland Cavaliers are hot. And I mean, honestly, I mean, Cam, Avi, whoever wants to end up going first, what do you think is the main reason as to why the Cleveland Cavaliers are where they're at right now, sitting at 12-0 to start the season?
I'll let Avi take this one first, man. You that's the first sport you jumped into with Cleveland.
I got some thoughts on it. So obviously you can't go into this conversation without first saying Kenny Atkinson is clearly a fantastic coach. And, looking at our roster, he's basically taken the same roster from last season with a few changes and made this team super successful. You love to see the way he talks about his players. He seems like he genuinely really cares about these guys. That was kind of a theme for the Guardian season with Stephen Vogt really loving his players. And you see Kenny come in now and really take to the Cavs roster pretty immediately. You love to see what the Cavs are doing right now. And I think their first big test is going to be against the Celtics coming up here soon. But yeah, we'll look to see what they do then and over the course of the next few games. But yeah, I'll pass over to Cam. I'm curious to see what he thinks about what's going on with the Cavs right now.
So I think Kenny Atkinson is a big picture of why we have success in this organization right now with how we've been playing. A lot of that also comes back to how JB ran the Cavs last year. Okay. With JB, it just seemed like everything was with Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell. He'll play 40 minutes a game as long as he is the main scorer, the main guy. Rightfully so. He's a great player. He's an all-star. But you're seeing difference in this year is they're spreading the ball out a lot more. Not everyone's eating this year. It's not just one guy. And the rotation gives those guys more time to rest, more time to, feel how the game's going to go along. And that definitely is a big plus to how you're seeing, guys like Ty Jerome get in there and actually be a big factor, giving Garland and Mitchell minutes to rest. And that's going to be the key of success moving forward. I honestly believe that.
I mean, and another topic too. I mean, you bring up Ty Jerome too. I ended up saying it last night too. I don't know if I said it in our group chat, but I mean, I said it in plenty of other group chats. But is it just me, or is Ty Jerome really showing shades of Matthew Dellavedova? Because man, is that guy scrappy. I mean, he's a guy that literally ended up playing only 15 minutes last year. And I mean, he did win a national championship with Virginia, but it seems like his pro career, I mean, I'm sure people have counted him out. And now, I mean, you're seeing him produce and also play meaningful minutes with the Cleveland Cavaliers as well. I mean, what are your thoughts on just the fact of, is that, for one, a valuable or reasonable comparison with Ty Jerome and Matthew Dellavedova? I mean, obviously super early on, but do you guys see the shades of that, or am I just crazy? And could we also talk about the emergence of Evan Mobley as well? Because, I mean, that boy is definitely eating a lot more. I mean, you're seeing something that he didn't do in the past by even taking the ball up court. And now, like you guys said, Kenny Atkinson trusts him. And you're seeing a whole entire wider array of just all these Cleveland Cavaliers players and what they could end up doing as a team.
Yeah, I mean, for me, man, Ty Jerome is definitely not too far off from a Matthew Dellavedova comparison. He obviously had the better shot, in my opinion, than Dellavedova. Clearly, we've seen that. However, with Mobley, that was something I really thought they needed to focus on last year, and that was going to be their major point moving forward with the keys to success. That's where it is showing this year. Mobley is right out the gate. Seems like he's unstoppable for most nights. So definitely getting him involved in that development process of it and actually getting him the opportunity to take those shots. He's hit a couple 3-pointers. Now he's getting the 3-point shot down. That's definitely going to be a major factor. He was the centerpiece from the get-go when they decided to go ahead and try to trade for Donovan Mitchell. And you're seeing that right now with this team.
Yeah, I really like your point about Mobley coming out, looking a lot more confident this year. But I do want to go back to your comparison of Ty Jerome to Delly. I think it's great. But I agree with you, Cam. I could see Ty Jerome having a better scoring ability as he develops more in the league. Obviously, we see his ability to score the ball on short minutes right now. And on top of that, he plays this, I don't want to call it lockdown necessarily, but he plays really hard defense and hard-nosed defense. And he looks good out there. So where Ty Jerome, I think, can go from here is really solidifying his spot as, like that 7th, 8th guy coming off the bench. Curious to see if that's what he develops into down the road.
I mean, without a doubt, too. And I mean, if you even want to take it a step further, too, we've mentioned Evan Mobley, we've mentioned Ty Jerome, but even these role players like Tristan Thompson hasn't even really played meaningful minutes whatsoever, but he also has a role with this team. You end up looking at, I mean, you're 11th guy? Because usually you're getting a rotation of roughly, give or take 11 probably. You end up getting however many guys, but everybody has a role and everybody's seeing the court, Tristan Thompson not included, but he's still having a role. And I mean, last night is a prime example. I mean, you ended up, hold on, let me pause for a minute. Let me just talk about team chemistry for a minute. I just wanted to play this clip because we had a great laugh out of this on Saturday.
We love this clip.
So where we got to stay? Got to stay dangerous. Always and forever.
I was trying to get Avi to do it, actually. I wanted him to actually, eye contact and was doing it.
It's just
we were watching that live. Oh, man. But we were going ballistic watching that live. It was what an experience for the boys to have together.
Without a doubt. I mean, you're seeing, that is just the way you want to end up seeing team chemistry, too. Like, you have your guy that's a seasoned vet that's not really – I mean, he has a role, but he doesn't have a role. But they're still managing to show how well they click on a team together. And they're only 12 games in. And they just mesh so well. And the thing is that last night, going back to that point, Kenny Atkinson also shows that he could also have some very ballsy moves as well, because he literally pulled out all his starters, put in his reserves, and went, you know what? We're going to give our guys a break. He said after the game, people's legs are tired. We end up having travel days. They're playing every game, every other day, essentially. And we're going to have the bench roles step up and start scoring points. And they went on a run. I mean, what's that show you guys that, for one, Kenny Atkinson's coaching decision, if that goes south, that's a very foul mood for anybody in Cleveland. If they ended up going on a run of, let's say, 11-0 for the other side. If that was the other side when they ended up playing, I forgot who they played, the Bulls last night. If they ended up going the other way and the Bulls went on an 11-0 run with the reserves in, I mean, I feel like that's something that's happened in years past plenty of times. But instead, I mean, is the bench, again, it's super early on, but is the bench possibly that good? Or is it a matter of just team chemistry as well and everything just clicking together, which again stems from the head coach?
Well, Payton, I think this all goes back to kind of what we started with at the top of the hour, and it's Kenny Atkinson. He instills confidence in all players on the team to be able to step up, make plays, and we're seeing it. And this is a perfect example of it. I saw in the post-game interview yesterday, they went into the locker room saying, we're not outmatched right now, but, we definitely need to switch things up a bit. And Kenny said that in the post-game. Our plan in the second half was to come out, change up some looks, give the Bulls a bit of a change on defense. And then we saw lots of takeaways coming from that change on defense and turning into turnover or points on turnovers, which is exactly what their plan was to win that game. And they are simply going out and executing a plan that they already have. It seems like last year, a lot of the Cavs offense wasn't necessarily structured or planned. It was kind of, give the ball to the best guy and see what happens. Whereas this year, I'm seeing a lot more structured offense, and it's working out great.
Yeah, I think for me, man, it comes down to, Kenny Atkinson as well. Like, Avi, I'm going to piggyback off this. He's definitely the type of leader you needed on this team. He shows fire when you need him to. He trusts the players early on. I mean, we seen a clip the other day with Darius Garland, just eyeing down the coach, like the challenge that, and he trusted Garland in that aspect of it, and it ended up coming out in our favor. So, having that trust early with the players and the coaches, it definitely goes a long way. I mean, when it comes to the bench, I mean, we can look at the numbers if you want, but I mean, a big factor of this is Karis LeVert. A game where me and you were talking, Payton, we were looking terrible, sloppy, right? Going into halftime almost with the Pelicans. And we ended up coming back and winning that game by 12 points. I mean, that's a game where LeVert won 16 points off the bench, and he's shooting 56%. He's shooting 56% from the field. You can't ask for a better shooter off the bench right now than Karis LeVert. And then you also add in a player like, Ty Jerome. That's definitely a big factor in it. So, yeah, the bench is actually, as long as they can stay like they have been, which I don't see any reason why they would stop, I think that's going to be a big factor down the road.
Without a doubt. And I mean, I can't agree with you guys anymore, is that when you end up incorporating bench points as a whole too, that's the most important aspect of your game. Because in the past, I mean, Avi wasn't probably a Cavs fan back then, but Cam and I ended up seeing it plenty of times with LeBron in his first run. It was just Bron ball. That's all it was. It was just give the LeBron the ball. And then you saw that with Donovan Mitchell early on when he first came here, that it was just Donovan Mitchell ISO. That's all you ended up seeing. And it was just frustrating to watch, because once you end up facilitating the ball, you're doing so much better. And when you're able to have a bench that's able to score, your starters feel more relaxed. And yeah, last night, I mean, the best part of last night is the fact that you ended up having the bench score points. Darius Garland was like a kid afterwards, celebrating with his teammates, and he got a technical. And even in the post game too, Kenny Atkinson wasn't even mad about it. He just said it was just like they were kids again, and they were cheering on their teammates. And that's essentially what you do with, I mean, not even college anymore, but with high school basketball, that's essentially the same type of atmosphere you almost end up seeing, is that when you're 1 through 5 need a rest, you're 6, 7, 8, 9 guys, especially on a high school roster. If those guys are scoring, you're in good shape. But that's the best type of basketball you could end up having. And I mean, to take it a step further too, I was going to end up asking you guys, but with the NBA Cup coming up, it just so happens to be that these games coincide. First and foremost, what are your guys' thoughts about the NBA Cup? Is it something that you guys end up enjoying? Does it matter? Does it not matter? I mean, everybody has a thought at the end of the day. We just so happen to have a platform here at the We Like Sportz Show, and you can follow us on Twitter at We Like Sportz PC. That's a plug. But anyways.
Yeah, I mean, for me, man, I'm not a big fan of the Ohio Cup at all. I was not really a big fan of it coming into, last year when they said it was going to be a thing. Sometimes I feel like we try to do too much with these, sports and the playoffs scenarios. The Lakers hanging a banner for winning the cup last year. It's like, that's not the championship. Okay. It's a mid-season participation. Congratulations. You made the halfway point. They didn't win the whole thing at the end. So for me, the Ohio Cup is not something I'm a big fan of. Maybe Avi feels differently about it, but Avi, I'll let you answer that now.
I like it, to be honest. I think it elevates the pace of play. It elevates the excitement of the game early in the season. This is something we saw in the G League, tested for a few years before coming to the NBA. And it worked really well for them as well. I know it's a much smaller platform, but that is where the NBA tests a lot of their rules changes and season changes and all these kinds of things. So I think it's a good thing. I know it's always weird when we see something so drastic and new come into a league like this. But I think it's a good change for the league. And obviously we'll have to see how it goes over the next few years. But as of right now, I like it.
And I mean, the next couple of games too for the Cavs, you end up having 76ers tomorrow night at Philadelphia. You play the Bulls again on Friday, I believe, Friday the 15th. Yeah, Friday the 15th. And then you play the Hornets on Sunday at home. And it very well might be your first true test on Tuesday in Boston. When we come back here next week, we might be previewing Boston against Cleveland with the Cavs sitting at 3 more wins, so 15-0. So, I mean, do you guys possibly see that the Cavs lose any of those games? I mean, Joel Embiid and the Sixers, they're tough, but they're not that tough this year. I mean, this year alone, the 76ers are having a rough season. I mean, yeah, Joel Embiid had been out for a majority of the season early on just because of disciplinary issues, but they're 2-7 right now. They're scoring 107 points per game, but with the Cavs scoring 122, I mean, that might be the only true test in my opinion. But after that, you end up having the Bulls. You took care of the Bulls once. It was a close game, but on your home floor, I mean, John Michael and Austin Carr said it best after the game yesterday. They mentioned the fact that very soon, all these close games are just getting to be close games, and they're just, for a fan, it's just so much anxiety and it's just so much attachment that ends up capturing you during the game that this team is due for a blowout. I could see that happening against the Bulls or against the Hornets, not necessarily Philly, but I could very well see them be undefeated up until that Boston game at Boston.
I hear you. And I do tend to agree with you that these next few games aren't as much of a test as Boston. But I'll tell you what, the Hornets are playing good ball right now. I know they've gotten some big wins. LaMelo is doing high school basketball plays in the NBA, which is ridiculous. But it's happening. It's real. And honestly, the Bulls always put up good games in Cleveland, it seems. And it also seems to bring out the best in the Cavs when the Bulls play in Cleveland. I mean, we saw Donovan Mitchell drop 75 against the Bulls a couple years ago. Or was that last year?
I think it was.
I believe it was last year.
That was last year.
It took overtime, didn't it? Double overtime as well, I think.
Yeah, it was a close game,
so.
long game. Yeah, and I had tickets to the game and didn't go. I will never forgive myself for it. But here we are. Anyways,
instead, years later, you get to talk about it. How about that? And years later,
yeah, right?
in our book is just a year later.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the Cavs are going to play some good games against these. I think they'll be close. I think the 76ers will put up a good game against the Cavs. They always tend to play up to the Cavaliers, at least over the past couple of years. I know this obviously is a different team that we're looking at this year with what we're talking about the Cavs doing so far. But it's going to be a fun stretch to watch before they get to the Celtics for kind of the beginning to the first little bit of the season that they've put on a real show.
Yeah, for me, I think that the trap game, if you want to call it, will be the one against the Hornets. I mean, for me, they've come very close to beating top teams already. I mean, 10 points or less in a lot of matchups. They lost to 10 against the Celtics in a game where they pretty much gave it away at the end. They did give it away at the end, but I think that's your trap game next out of the next 3 coming up. You could still win it. I do think we could still win it, but you just got to make sure you play your brand of basketball and you have a good shot there. Going to Boston, that was going to be a tough matchup. That's going to be tough. Next Tuesday, we're in Boston. Hopefully we can do what the Warriors did and, just continue playing our ball. Don't let the, crowd get to you and just keep playing.
And just to end up checking it out too, Donovan Mitchell dropped 71, and that was 2 years ago. But if you end up looking at it just from the calendar perspective, January 2nd, 2023 in overtime against Chicago. So his first season with Cleveland, but still 71 points. I mean, with the way Donovan Mitchell could end up looking like from time to time too, he almost looked like he could have done that last night against the Bulls with how hot he was. Because anytime he touched the ball in the first half, everything was going in.
That 360 layup was ridiculous, by the way.
Well, they call him Spider for a reason. I mean, that guy can do some crazy things with his body on the court. I mean, you'll see him go up for one of these. He does this thing where he goes up and over somebody's head with a ball, and then he'll spin, and it's in the hoop before you even know he left the floor. It's unbelievable what he's able to do.
And the best part is if we ended up talking about this before we ended up meeting each other this season for the Guardians, there was a possibility Donovan Mitchell was not going to be with the Cavs, especially long term. But instead, you have a core four with Mobley, you have Darius, you have Jared Allen, you have Donovan Mitchell. I mean, call me crazy, and I don't want to end up looking too far ahead, but I could see a couple of rings in the future for the Cavs, and that's what you're seeing right now to an early start, as good as it is. And having a foundation, I mean, there was never really a foundation in Cleveland when it came to basketball, I feel like.
I like your overreaction there. That's good. We're getting a ring. That's great.
Could you tell I'm a Cleveland fan coming from a Yankees fan? I mean, I thought World Series when we ended up facing the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, we agreed that going into that playoff series, it was going to be a good one, but we're not talking baseball right now. And to go on the record with this, I had no affiliation in the NBA prior to moving to Cleveland and falling in love with the Cavaliers. So I'm all one. What do they say?
All in.
No, they go all for one, one for all.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah, way back when.
Bingo.
So you're going back to Zydrunas Ilgauskas days back then. That's Big Z.
Yeah, Javi's aging himself. He's not even been in Cleveland. He just got back, by the way, guys. He's happy to be in Cleveland.
What a deep cut reference. Not Payton making references from the bar this weekend on a show that nobody gets.
Of course, Dina's.
Really brings them together, brings people into our lives. You know, that's how they connect with us.
They just need to know that you've been out of state for so long and you just got back. But anyway,
weekend, but hey.
So happy to be here. Prices are 30% down. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. It's got to be a lot cheaper here.
That is true. But on another note, though, I mean, we talked Cavs. Do we want to end up? I mean, Avi, let's get this out of the way, too. Your team that you wrote I can't speak. Your team that you root for. That was the sentence I was looking for. Say it slow, you'll get it right. But the team you root for is for football.
The New York Giants. Yes, the toilet bowl disaster of the New York Giants.
I think that title belongs to us, by the way, right now.
I think it belongs to both Cleveland
and
a
hot race for the bottom. Yeah, for the best picks in the draft.
So you got 2-7 Cleveland and 2-8 New York. I don't know who I would end up wanting to be, but I'd rather be the Steelers fan here. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you must be feeling good, huh?
Oh, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling dangerous.
Danger. Oh, yeah.
There's the Baker reference. Yeah, Yeah, I didn't want to get rid of him. Did not want to get rid of him.
Are you feeling unlimited?
Unlimited? I could be. I mean, you never know. But, I mean, Cam had a great week this week. I mean, the Browns didn't play. He couldn't be too disappointed.
We still lost the bye week. I mean, let's be real here. We had an article break out that our left tackle decided he wanted to make a business decision and not play a couple weeks ago. So, you know, it's always fun here in Cleveland.
To be fair, there was much worse headlines in the recent past for players on the Browns. So that's
just fast forward. Go ahead and keep going.
He's not wrong.
Again, I did not want to get rid of Baker. That's all I'm going to say on that.
I'm not trying to be a jerk,
but I mean, you brought it up with Jed Wills too. And Avi, I don't know if you ended up following with the Browns too. I'm sure you have, just because you are Cleveland based. I'm sure it's hard to keep up with New York. But what are you guys' thoughts on the fact that Jed Wills decided to make a business decision on not playing against the Ravens, I believe it was? Because it wasn't the Chargers game. It was the Ravens game that he decided that they didn't need him for because they won. But that could very well be the last time Cleveland wins this year. But with Jed Wills, I mean, he gave up his spot to Jones at the end of the day. And, I mean, Are you guys through with Jed Wills when it ends up coming down to it, before even that ended up happening with his statement about a business decision?
This is reminiscent of.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this makes me think of something else that happened very recently that was much more of a headline around the league, and it was Anthony Richardson just tagging himself out of the game. Both of these situations have really been looked at as unacceptable in the NFL. I mean, you have a job, you're paid to do a job. Any other job you decide to just not show up for no reason, you don't have that job anymore. I don't know if that's necessarily how the Browns are going to handle this. Obviously, in the Colts situation, they went straight to Joe Flacco after that week. But I would assume that there would be some sort of longer disciplinary action taken for Wills in this case. Cam, what do you think about it?
I mean, for me, man, it seems like this is the last time you're going to see Jed Wills start for the Browns was prior to the Ravens game. He decided to make his business decision against the Ravens. Chargers, they said, you know what? You'll be the backup. Let DeJuan Jones be your starting left tackle then. And, barring any injuries at the left tackle position, I do think this is the last you're going to see of Jedrick Wills, unfortunately. You don't make those, especially in a contract year. First off, you don't do that in a contract year, okay? He's more than likely going to go to another team, but whatever team he goes to, I don't think they're starting him either. After a comment like that, you just don't do that. Same thing with Anthony Richardson, like you brought up. You don't do that.
It's the handling.
You literally go back to like all the successful coaches. I mean, Belichick is notorious for this. You want to take a break? Okay, you'll take a break and you'll be the backup for the rest of the year. We're here to win. We're not here to do what we just did. That's not going to happen. It's not going to work. If that's how you feel, maybe you're just not cut out for the NFL.
Yeah, agreed there. If I may, I'd like to turn this to a more positive Browns conversation and talk about Cedric Tillman. I love that guy. I think he is reminiscent of a guy like Nico Collins. I know that's a bold thing to say, but big-bodied wide receiver, making plays up the seam. You just love to see that. And it's kind of a perfect match right now for what Jameis is doing. Jameis slings the ball sometimes without too much regard for the defense and if they're going to pick him off. But that works well for a guy like Cedric Tillman, who then in turn, I think the other wide receivers, Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy can play off of that big-bodied wide receiver as in their slot roles. I just wanted to talk about those guys because that's what makes me excited about the Browns, watching the passing plays on offense.
And I mean, that's something too that you ended up not really seeing either with Deshaun Watson. And it's still mind-blowing to me too that you ended up paying how much money for him. And you saw it with Joe Flacco when he was a Brown, that the passing game opened up a ton. And now Jameis Winston, another backup that wasn't expected to do much. I mean, his first game brought the Browns to a win against the Ravens. Cedric Tillman had a big factor in it. Same thing against the Chargers. I mean, yeah, it was in the last couple of minutes of the game, but Tillman had another touchdown. I mean, you're building the team around it. Like, Tillman could be a number one within the next couple of years. It could be very interesting. And I feel like a lot of people in Cleveland, like you said, Avi, doesn't give him enough respect yet, just because, I mean, whether or not it's Cleveland, whether or not they're 2-7, whether or not it's the fact that it's garbage time, whether or not it's just because you end up having Jerry Jeudy that was expected to be your number one after Amari Cooper got traded away. Elijah Moore is your two, but I think Cedric Tillman at this point very well might be your number two instead, and Jerry Jeudy just has the role of number one just because that's why you traded him. So they're not going to end up going back and saying, well, he's not our number one. Internally, he might be the number one, but on the depth chart, I don't see Jeudy falling anywhere. But I'd agree with you, though, that Tillman is underrated and underappreciated for Browns fans. And I'm excited to see what they do forward with him, especially if they get a quarterback that could actually be regulated in the system for a while, as opposed to just floating backups around. Even though for whatever reason with Stefanski, give him a backup, he'll give you gold.
Yeah,
Put that on a T-shirt.
That tends to be the case with Stefanski. I don't understand how that goes. Now, you being a Giants fan, Avi, maybe you can correct me on this. I believe Jalen Hyatt was also, like Cedric Tillman, a receiver for the Tennessee Vols. If I'm not
That sounds
mistaken,
right.
if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, Hyatt went one pick before Tillman. And I'll be honest, Hyatt was the guy that I originally wanted, and I mean, he's getting this, tough deal here with Daniel Jones, but Tillman being able to finally turn that page and actually show that, like, hey, I'm here, I could be that number one. And like you said, you need that big body receiver that can go out there and make those catches to open it up for the rest of the smaller guys like Elijah Moore, like Jerry Jeudy. I mean, we've seen that success multiple times. You just need that big body receiver. I mean, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. You see it left and right around this league. So hopefully this is just a consistent thing for Tillman now, no matter who's at quarterback. Obviously, like you said, Payton, let's get a solid quarterback first. But
yeah, it seems like from the games I've watched and the film I've watched after the fact that Tillman is kind of slotted into Amari Cooper's role in the offense, and that's why I think he's getting a bit more attention, especially from the fantasy football community, because he's putting up 11 or 10, 11 targets a game, 8 to 11 receptions a game over his first 3 weeks with Jameis, and that's alarming to the fantasy football people who are saying, wait, this guy is getting a lot of attention from his quarterback and he's making plays after the catch. And I think that's, has a lot to do with the structure of the offense and the fact that he's slotted perfectly into Amari Cooper's role after watching Amari do it for the first, 6-7 games of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, as we ended up mentioning it too, with the Browns needing a quarterback too, I was just curious, and I ended up just pulling up PFF.com, and I was decided, just as you guys were talking, to pull up the quick mock draft. They have Travis Hunter going number 1 to Jacksonville, Jalen Milroe to the Giants for Avi, number 2, the Tennessee Titans at number 3, and then over at the Browns, I mean, I wouldn't even end up taking a quarterback if they had the 4th overall pick, because you could end up waiting, or you could end up, like, the way quarterbacks are, I'd rather get the best player available, because Cam Ward, I don't see it being a 4th overall pick. Sanders, Same thing. Nussmeier, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Cam's brother right there that he ends up loving so much that wants him to be a Cleveland Brown. You could get him in the 2nd or 3rd round even. And you look at all these guys, Kyle McCord, another one, Drew Aller. Like, you're better off just waiting, because this quarterback class also isn't that great either, unfortunately. And maybe you just end up waiting until the future. But sometimes with Browns fans, you just want to end up having that do it now mentality. And I think at this point, if you're Kevin Stefanski, if you're a Browns fan, you're essentially just better off just waiting to see what that next class gets you. But would you end up actually getting a quarterback that gets a team together that you ended up seeing it last year? It seems to be that a lot of these Browns players don't want to play for Deshaun Watson or with Deshaun Watson. And that's why you saw the effort so less until Jameis Winston came in. And it seems like they ended up going through a life-changing experience. And you end up seeing the team now. They might end up losing out, but they're going to fight in every single game, though, too, even if they did lose out. But, I mean, even realistically speaking, I don't see the Browns losing out. I mean, they play the Saints. That's going to be a tough matchup, but they could win that. Pittsburgh, we all know it. They usually split with Pittsburgh, whether I like it or not. Kansas City, you're not winning that game. I'm sorry. Miami, debatable. Cincinnati, debatable. Denver, Denver put up a fight with Kansas City. So, it could be a possibility, but unless if they split with the Steelers, the Browns might end up finishing 3-14.
Yeah, I think with the Miami game, that one is one that you can definitely win, especially because it's played at the late end of December in Cleveland. You know, Miami, we have known they don't play well in the cold. They don't. That's been a proven fact there. Now when you come back to the draft aspect of it, if I could backtrack for a second, you know,
Yeah.
if I'm Cleveland, you know, there are a lot of other talented positions in this draft class. Obviously, you know, you got Raiders, you got the Patriots, you got the Saints. You know, I'm looking to possibly trade back with a team like, you know, Miami or Dallas. I mean, Miami needs help on defense. They do. And there's some good defensive players coming out of this draft. They're picking 10th right now. If you're able to slide back to in that 10 to 15 range with a team like Miami, Dallas, Colts, Bengals, obviously that's probably not going to happen. You're not trading with the division rival. Buccaneers and Seattle. I mean, those are all teams that are like, okay, maybe I do have to jump up and get a better defensive player in this draft because quarterbacks are going to keep falling. And that could be an opportunity for you to, you know, get some draft capital in the process of that and still take your quarterback. But looking at, you know, the draft class for next year, I mean, there's only 3 in here that are actually, to me, would be worth it. I mean, Arch Manning, we all know what Eli did to the San Diego Chargers at the time. So I don't think that's going to be a case for Archie Manning coming here. It's not going to happen. I honestly believe that won't happen. He'll pull one of those. You got the Tennessee Vols quarterback, you know, Nico. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. It's not going to happen. And then you got Dante Moore. So, I mean, there's 3 quarterbacks there. You do have more viable options this year. It's just 4. Not a big fan of it. And we would watch what Cam Ward did on Saturday without anyone else bringing anything up.
Yeah. I honestly, when I think about the Browns and the way they draft, I think about all the big acquisitions they've made at quarterback. You know, going before Deshaun Watson, it was Baker Mayfield. I could honestly see the Browns doing what the Browns love to do and take a big name at the top of the draft and draft Shedeur Sanders just because of the name, because of what comes with them. It's just something I could totally see the Browns doing because it's a very Browns thing to do, is get the name. But at the same time, we have no idea where the team will be at with Deshaun Watson. Once we get to that point, he could, who knows, he could not be on the roster at that point. I know that's possible. It's a very slim chance of that being the case, but you never know. So we'll have to see what plays out the rest of the season. And, I think we'll have a very interesting conversation about this in a few months.
And on top of it, too, I mean, I was just looking as well. When they end up having the needs for the Browns outside of quarterback, they have running back, wide receiver, and tackle as well. Nick Chubb ended up only signing a 1-year deal going into this year, obviously coming off of his injury. But there's a chance, though, too, if he doesn't end up producing, I mean, yeah, he had his injury. The knees aren't as good as they used to be just because that's the life of a running back. I mean, the age expectancy, look at Todd Gurley, prime example of it. I mean, he's not even in the league anymore. A lot of these running backs outside of Derrick Henry fit that variable that they can't last that long. But if you ended up reaching, though, Ashton Gentry, I almost did it.
That's where I was going to go with as well. Yep.
But if you want to reach, though, with that, I mean, you could end up doing that. I mean, he's produced very well with Boise State or Keyshawn Judkins, too, for Ohio State. And that goes back to what we were talking about the other day, too. I mean, Ohio State and Cleveland just don't mesh together because they don't give it an opportunity. But if they decided to end up reaching for an Ohio State guy, maybe it might work. Otherwise, I mean, Gentry, good idea. Keyshawn Judkins, another one, great idea. But a running back in the first round might not hurt you.
I like that a lot. And going back to Austin, it's Genty or Gentry?
Genty,
correct.
Yeah,
yes.
We had that argument on Saturday.
No, I think
Jeffrey.
Yes, he's the second coming of Alshon Jeffrey, correct. No, I think that guy is, frankly, shades of Jahmyr Gibbs, if I may, with what we're seeing right now, if not more impressive with what he's doing in college. I'd say obviously more impressive with what he's doing right now at Boise State. But bringing a guy like that into a program can be a spark for sure. And I think any team that gets him is going to be very happy with his output.
It's pretty wild too. I just want to add this point so we could maybe change gears off of the very famous Week 11 Cleveland Browns draft talk already. But in this PFF fantasy football mock draft simulator, I took Genty in the 4th overall pick. Cam Ward, if anything else went about, they ended up having the Jets get him 8th overall. After that, there's no other quarterback taken off the board. And I just only did the first round, but Sanders isn't even on the first round. He doesn't make it until the second.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the teams that are on that list, though. I mean, the Jets make sense with the Aaron Rodgers situation. I mean, Carolina's going to see what they have with Bryce Young for another year. It seems like maybe he's found something there last 2 games. Now, yes, it was against the Giants and the Saints that are kind of crumbling on the inside. But then you look at Miami. I mean, they're sticking with Tua. They gave him the extension. Dallas is not going anywhere with Dak at this point. Colts, that might be a team that actually goes and gets a quarterback. But then other than that, I mean, the rest of these names on here, Seattle, Rams, Bears, none of these guys are going to get quarterbacks. So it does make sense for them to possibly go with a quarterback in the second round. I'm starting to see your point with the second round quarterback pick now for the Browns if they're able to get Genty and also get a quarterback in the second round. That would make a lot of sense now. In that aspect of it. I also do think that the other one is I think his last name is Banks. He's the left tackle for the Texas Longhorns as well right now. He's one of the highest rated offensive tackles coming out of college this year. That could be your plug. Yeah. Is he with Texas? Yeah, he's with Texas.
Yeah, Texas. Right? They had him go 17th overall to the Bears.
Yeah, for him to possibly be, and he's really, really good. For him to possibly be your hopeful Joe Thomas replacement at left tackle. I mean, nobody's going to be as good as Joe Thomas was for Cleveland, but I mean, to fill a gap, at least 3/4 of what he did would be huge for this offense.
And I mean, to add to your list too, they ended up having the Raiders the very next pick too. They could have gone quarterback. I mean, they ended up having them go wide receiver though. And the thing is that the Raiders, I mean, you're kind of in a lull almost. Like you're stuck with what you got. I mean, Gardner Minshew isn't your guy in Las Vegas. I mean, let me see actually who they have in their depth chart because they don't really have. They ended up. Who did they draft this year? I knew they draft a quarterback, I believe.
The Raiders got Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. That's who I know they have.
Yep, O'Connell's the one. Yep. And they ended up trading for Desmond Ridder too. I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, Ritter's somebody that is just kind of stuck too. I don't see him performing anywhere either. I mean, the Raiders could use the guy, but they very well might end up just giving a chance to Ridder because he never really had the opportunity in Atlanta. And Atlanta ended up going ahead, got Kirk Cousins, and ended up getting Michael Penix Jr.
Which was baffling when they drafted him. I don't understand that pick at that time, but we'll see what happens there. On a little side note, I got a notification. I don't know if you guys got it as well. Jose Ramirez did end up winning his 5th Silver Slugger after the season he had. So throw that out there.
Fantastic. I did not
Gotta
see
love
that.
And in other news too, I saw this earlier. Since we are talking baseball, I was actually shocked to see this. And it's one of the friends of the show, I guess you could say, if you want to end up considering him that. Let me pull it up here really quick. And he's in a contract season. Juan Soto has narrowed down his free agency decision between 4 teams, the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Mets, and the Dodgers. According to Daniel Judgeport, it's a writer for The Athletic.
Payton, I need to get this out. If Juan Soto goes to the Boston Red Sox, you will never see from me again. I'm saying it right now.
In all likelihood, do you see that actually happening, though? Let's be real here. He has a chance to go to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers would just become even more of a juggernaut. They're going to have Shohei. They're going to end up having Soto on top of it. They're going to end up having Yoshi Yamamoto, and they very well might end up adding the next guy that they ended up having declare for their draft that's friends with Shohei and Yamamoto. I mean, the Dodgers are essentially doing, and I hate to say it this way, and I hate that it's happening in general, but the Dodgers are doing exactly what the Yankees have done for years. They're throwing money, and chances are, is with Juan Soto, they'll just end up deferring the contract.
Those contracts started with Alex Rodriguez, man. That's what really set a chain of events with this.
That's a good point. I was going to say, yeah, Juan Soto is going to be getting paid in 100.
Yeah, without a doubt. And how would you feel, Avi, too, just from your perspective, because you are a Yankees guy, if he went to the Mets? Still New York, but it's not, it's not the New York team you wanted.
I think the only way I can really look at it is the only team I'd be happy with him going to is the Yankees. But this is kind of a similar discussion to what happened this past year with Saquon Barkley. You know, a guy who obviously he's not homegrown like Saquon, Juan Soto isn't. But to see this star leave your team is one of the most heartbreaking things, especially when the Yankees looked like they could have won a World Series this year. And obviously they fell absolutely flat in the World Series after a really exciting series against the Guardians. But if they lose Juan Soto in the offseason here, I think the conversation going into next season for the Yankees is going to be a very different one. It's going to be more about who are we going to bring in? Is Aaron Judge going to be the guy this year? Obviously, he wasn't in the postseason or the playoffs. So who's it going to be?
I mean, very valid question, too, without a doubt, just because Aaron Judge needs somebody that is a foundation around him. I mean, without Giancarlo Stanton against the Guardians, too, who knows how that series goes, but we could end up playing that what-if game over and over again as well, too.
The series ends very differently if Giancarlo Stanton doesn't do what he did. That's for sure.
Bobby, I tell you what, man, in my opinion, I think your next big bat is actually in your farm system. I do think that he is actually, I mean, he's gotten all the hype. He's gotten all the hype. They call him the Martian, man. Dominguez is just Jason Dominguez is definitely the guy that I've been talking to my neighbor who's also a Yankee fan, and I don't think I've actually talked to you about this, but you got to call him up at some point and just let him play. I mean, he's starting to waste talent in AAA. He's too good to be in AAA, man. And now if Juan Soto does leave, definitely opens up a spot for him. And I mean, he could play right, left, or center, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree with you. And this is something I've criticized about the Yankees and the way they've handled their farm system in the past, 5 years. It seems like it's been pretty egregious where they're leaving some of their best players. I mean, they did the same thing with Volpe, right? Where they left him in the farm system for, a number of years. He was playing unreal ball. Everything the Yankees were hearing was, oh, this guy in the minors is tearing it up. But we never got to see him for years and years and years. But with a guy like Volpe, it worked. He came in, had a real breakout season this year. And you could probably attribute some of that to his time spent in the minors really developing rather than thrusting this guy into a position where the lights might be a little too bright at that point in his career. So while I don't like some of the things that they do with their farm system, I can also understand why they do it.
I mean, I can't agree with you more, but then if you end up looking at it from a Cleveland perspective as well, though, I mean, the thing that always comes to mind with the farm system and the Yankees is the whole entire Clint Frazier thing that was in the benefit of Cleveland at the end of the day. It's something that, I mean, the Yankees ended up being A-okay with getting prospects, and usually in the end, that's usually how it goes. They just get a prospect, you trade them away later on, you get a proven talent. But Clint Frazier was somebody that Cleveland thought would have been huge. It was always Frazier. It was always Bradley Zimmer back then, too, as well. And Clint Frazier just didn't amount up to be anything necessarily. Bradley Zimmer, same thing. Tyler Naquin, you could consider the same thing. I mean, he's still in the league out of all three of them. But outside of that, I mean, it's very interesting how you see other teams. And I guess even for Avi, you could probably end up considering it as well, too, because once you end up seeing Cleveland end up having their farm system and bring these guys up, I mean, you wouldn't be talking about a John Kenzie Noel home run in the ALCS if they didn't end up giving him a chance in June for the Guardians, because he was just tearing it up in AAA. And he got a chance and ended up making a moment for himself. He very well might not have another chance like that or another opportunity to make a name for himself, because look at Oscar Gonzalez before with the Guardians. But you could also end up building off of it, or you could end up just having a moment, and still having a moment in the MLB is still something special to have, I guess, at the end of the day. But before we end up heading out here, it's already been an hour, which is crazy. Our first hour together, just a couple dudes just bullshitting together. I mean, it goes by really quick. But before we end up going, I do want to end up, we already kind of previewed the Cavs, and up until next Tuesday when they end up playing the Celtics, we kind of see them winning out. But to go back to the Browns, they do play the Saints. What are your guys' thoughts against the Saints this Sunday? I mean, let's start off with this one. We all bet end up here. We end up using a variety of different sources. I mean, one of these sources as well that I use personally is MyBookie. MyBookie's a great app. But when you end up using that, you think under 3 interceptions for Jameis Winston, or you think over? I mean, you could also succeed too. Look at Jared Goff. He had 5 interceptions in Sunday night and somehow won the game.
I honestly think you got to go over under on that, actually. They just traded away Marshawn Lattimore. Their secondary has not been the best all year, but getting rid of a top tier corner like that, one that would have actually given Tillman fits this weekend, that's big. We obviously know Jameis can either show up and be 50-50, or he can show up and be, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. You just never know with Jameis. But this weekend, considering that the Saints, I mean, barely squeaked by last week, and their secondary is not what it used to be, and getting rid of that top corner, I do like the odds here. They currently have the Saints favored it at 1.5 right now, currently as well. But when it comes to that aspect of it, I think you got to take the under on it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And something I like to look at in the NFL in particular, it's kind of been an interesting phenomenon the past few years. It's when we're seeing head coaches fired, we see the week after these teams play a great game. I think the winning percentage is like 100% or something for teams in the past 3 seasons that have fired their coach, and they win the next game almost every time. They play great. They come out looking like they have a ton of fire. And generally, over the long term, these teams aren't going to have success. It's just not sustainable. That level of play after that first week, when these guys have a big jolt of energy and all that comes in with the change to the head coach. So I think this week the Saints don't necessarily put up too great of a game. I think they're going to struggle on offense with the Browns defense. Hopefully the secondary locking down a lot of these wide receivers that are inexperienced. I mean, what do we have? Marquez Valdez-Scantling is wide receiver 1 for the Saints right now. That's going to be a tough matchup for the Saints against the Browns secondary that they haven't necessarily looked themselves of last year, but they still look pretty good.
I mean, the biggest key factor in this one is going to be containing Alvin Kamara. That's going to be their number one priority this weekend. Shahid's also out. It seems like Chris Olave should be out. Like you said, MVS is pretty much their only weapon other than Kamara right now. You can bottle up Kamara, you're good.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And going back to the betting side of things, I really like the over on Kamara's reception line. I haven't taken a look at it yet this week, but it's generally set between 5.5, 6.5 generally. And I think that they are going to have to go to him a lot as the offense breaks down once it hits the secondary, and they're going to have to check down to Alvin Kamara. Also, Alvin Kamara receiving yards are probably going to look pretty nice as well, especially after he came off a week where he missed a absolute bomb touchdown catch late in the game that would have, put them up a whole nother score. So I think Kamara has a great game this week.
And I mean, all around, you guys see the Browns winning this week at all, or you think it's another loss? Let's be real here. I mean, personally, I don't think they end up winning against the Saints. It's going to be a close game. It's probably going to come down to a field goal. But if I'm going to put a bet on the game, though, I don't think the Saints are going to end up losing this game against the Browns, especially money line wise. If the spread's 1.5, I'd take it.
I tend to agree with you, Payton. as much as I would like to say I think the Browns win this game, I think it's going to be, a 14-17, a 17-21 type game where it's close the whole way. And the Browns just tend to lose those games, especially this season in close games, besides really the Ravens game where they played out of their minds. That's kind of what we've seen from the Browns is they don't step up in those high pressure situations. So I hope to see a good game out of the Browns, but I think the Saints come out on top by, let's say, 3.
I guess I'll be the homer in this situation. I do think that this is a game that if the Browns are going to win, this would be the one they win. Coming off the bye week, well rested, you're given another chance for Denzel Ward to get healthy. That was a big factor in the last game, not having a guy like him that can contain, Quentin Johnston, and just letting the running game go all over you for the Chargers. I do think that the Saints, they've been playing very close. They lost to the Carolina Panthers, and then they barely squeaked by last week by 3. The Browns were well rested in this one. I do think this is an opportunity for them to win. Would I put my money on it at plus 100? It's not a terrible odd. I do think that the lock in this one, though, is under 44.5 right now.
I would agree with you on that one, too. Definitely. And the
last
time
we're all there.
I wanted to end up hitting on, too. Chicago Bears ended up firing their offensive coordinator, too. Do you think Caleb Williams actually has a game that might actually be considered a breakout game even, too? To obvious point, sometimes when a coach gets fired, it fires up a team. I think Caleb Williams finally shows up, and you actually see a number 1 overall pick. No, he's not going to finish off as good as Jaden Daniels is, but I think Caleb Williams shows you that he could have been the guy, but he's not going to be the guy this year, if that makes sense. What do you guys think?
From my aspect of it, playing the Packers, who have been one of the better defenses this season, you got Alexander in the back. What is it, Stokes, I believe. Both those guys, they're gonna give you fits in that secondary. So if the Bears, their running game is hit or miss sometimes. I don't think this is a game that Caleb Williams is going to show up, honestly. That's just my opinion on it. I think the Packers defense is going to actually cause more trouble for him.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Cam. And it sucks because I want to see Williams do well. Like it's fun to watch these young quarterbacks when they're flying around playing good football. That might be because we don't get to see it too often in this league. Like last year watching CJ Stroud tear it up was incredible. But I really do agree that I think this change isn't going to do much. I know a lot of people right now in the NFL world are saying, well, Waldron was keeping Caleb Williams into this old style of football. That's not really what he plays. That's not, that's not what he did in college. But I don't really see any sort of offensive scheme change making the world of difference that Caleb Williams and the Bears need to be successful on offense, especially when we saw DeAndre Swift having an absolutely horrendous start to the season. He picked it up for a few games, but 3 games that of good play at running back doesn't change the entire fundamental structure of a team. So I don't think we see anything other than kind of the status quo that we've got from Caleb Williams so far.
And if you don't mind me throwing one more thing out there for you, Payton, you talked about bounce back with Caleb Williams. I think this is CJ Stroud's bounce back game against Dallas on Monday night.
I could definitely see that too.
I like that.
Dallas is rough right now, and Stroud needs a bounce back game too, just because, Houston, I don't know how they lost that game, but we played the Lions. The Lions are just that good. I think early prediction, November 12th, 2024, very well might be the Chiefs against the Lions in the Super Bowl.
Be a good matchup.
And it might be one loss combined between both of them too, and that'd be the Lions. So who knows, honestly.
Yeah, just to tack onto that, Cam, that game, that Sunday night football game between the Texans and the Lions felt like a power of friendship type game where the Lions just willed that game to their favor. It's not often we've seen that this season in the NFL. It was kind of refreshing, even though it was kind of a stinker of an offensive game, obviously with all the turnovers on both sides.
Yeah.
It was refreshing to have a real competitive comeback win for what's kind of considered one of the few powerhouse teams in the league right now.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to see, especially with how, most games this year, they've just been blowouts for the most part. Very few have actually been competitive close. But
Well, before we end up going, we always end up doing it in the very typical fashion. Social media, Cam, Avi, where could they find you at? X, wherever you want to end up plugging, plug away, and we'll do the same thing here 6 to 7 next Tuesday. What do you say?
all right, I'd be down for that.
I would love that. Yeah.
You can find me on X if you want, at Sports Boy Cam.
And find me on Instagram at Avi Ehrlich, EHRLICH, baby. You can find me there. Hit me up if you want. If not, that's cool too. I don't really care, to be honest.
If not, if you want to tell them the Yankees suck, feel free to. If not, that's fine.
I didn't even think about that. I shouldn't have given out my Instagram.
His DMs are already flooding with that. You might as well just create another one right now.
I hope it happens. I really hope it happens.
Me and Payton will be the first one to do it too.
Oh, I'll do
like
it
you
right
haven't
now.
already. The text I received during the World Series, I was in pain.
I stayed calm during that. I don't know what Payton did, but
I didn't. I'll be honest, I didn't.
Clearly, I forgave him. We're all
doing this, yeah.
But
Bucky's sweatshirt.
Yeah, you like that?
Dude, Bucky's. It's the place to go.
Hey, see if
I've
they
only
got
been there
Buc-ee's.
once, but great experience. So if you're ever in Kentucky or south of there, make sure to stop in at Bucky's. Quick, free plug, future sponsor, Bucky's.
Bucky's, if you want to end up sponsoring us, just send Avi an Instagram message. He'll end up answering it. You don't even have to say Yankees suck or anything of that sort for baseball. Just reach out to Avi. He'll be the guy that ends up getting you for the sponsorship for Bucky's. I mean, we've all been there. Great food overall. I mean, Avi ended up seeing that right after he got back to Cleveland. He actually went down to Bucky's out of state again and then came back home.
Soon to be a Ohio franchise down in Dayton. We're gonna have our first Ohio Bucky's.
We got to push it up north a little bit more.
We'll get them to Cleveland, maybe with the partnership with the We Like Sportz show here in Cleveland.
See,
Possibly.
he's onto something here.
Possibly.
We're moving up in the world, boys. I'm telling you.
Let's do it.
But again, you've been watching and listening to the We Like Sportz pod. Oh, wow. I almost said podcast. It's not a podcast. Let me redo that. You've been listening to the We Like Sportz show on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. You could catch the podcast version. That's that word. 9 a.m. Wednesday morning. We'll end up posting it there. And you've been watching the We Like Sportz show. For Cam, for Abby, I'm Peyton Vince. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Take care, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
How's it going?